Welcome to Beyond Belief. This is the final episode in our journey through the teachings of Jesus. We've walked slowly through his words together, from the announcement of the kingdom, to the Beatitudes, to salt and light, to the hidden life, to anxiety, to the narrow road, to the warning of Lord, Lord. And now, Jesus ends his sermon the way every great teacher eventually does. Not with more information, but with a decision. Because every teaching eventually asks the same question. What will you do with what you've heard? And Jesus answers that question with one final image. 2 builders, 2 houses, 1 storm, 2 outcomes. And the difference between them is smaller than most people think. One foundation stands, the other falls. This is episode 10. Let me ask you something. What is your life actually built on? Not what you believe intellectually, not what you post online, not even what you hope is true, but what your life is actually resting on underneath all of it. Because whether we realize it or not, we're all building something. Every habit, every decision, every compromise, every act of courage, every moment of avoidance, brick by brick, a life takes shape. And most of the time, we don't really think about the foundation until something starts shaking it. Welcome back to Beyond Belief. This is the final episode in our series on the teachings of Jesus. And what's fascinating is that Jesus ends the Sermon on the Mount with a story. Not a debate, not a theological explanation, just a picture people can immediately recognize. Because stories have a way of slipping past our defenses. They quietly hold up a mirror. And this story does exactly that. There was a time in my own life when things looked very stable from the outside, but internally, something felt unsettled. There was pressure building, stress, uncertainty about the future. And I started realizing something uncomfortable. It's possible to build a life that appears solid externally, while underneath things are slowly shifting. And honestly, I think most people know what that feels like. Moments when you suddenly realize your peace was more fragile than you thought. Your confidence was more dependent on circumstances than you realized. And I think Jesus understood that about us. That we can become very skilled at maintaining appearances, while quietly avoiding deeper questions about foundation. We've all seen this happen. People who looked strong for years until life hits harder than expected. A loss, a betrayal, burnout, disappointment. A season that stripped away certainty. And suddenly, what looked unshakable starts revealing cracks underneath it. Not because storms create weakness, but because storms reveal what was already there. And that's where Jesus takes this conversation, not towards fear, but towards stability. Jesus says in Matthew 7, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who builds his house on the rock." Now that phrase matters. Puts them into practice. Not simply hearing, not agreeing, not admiring, actually building life around what he taught. And Jesus says that that kind of life becomes like a house built on rock. Not perfect, not storm-free, but anchored. What strikes me is that the wise builder isn't described as impressive. Jesus doesn't mention talent, status, influence, or knowledge. The wisdom is surprisingly ordinary. He listens, and then he responds, slowly, faithfully, and consistently. And over time, those quiet acts of obedience become a foundation strong enough to hold weight. Then Jesus says this, "The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall." And maybe the most important detail is this. The storm comes to both houses, both. Jesus never promised a storm-free life. He's describing reality as it actually is. The storms are part of being human. Loss, pressure, uncertainty, grief, disappointment, or change. No one gets exempt from those things. And over time, you realize the real question isn't, will life become difficult? The real question is, what holds you together when it does? Because calm seasons can hide weak foundations for a very long time. But eventually, something exposes what's underneath. Then Jesus continues, "But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on sand." And the contrast is almost unsettling in how small it is. Both builders hear the same words, both build houses, both likely believe their house will stand. The difference isn't exposure to truth, it's response. One acts on what he heard, the other one delays it. Jesus continues, "Then the rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." Not a slow collapse, a sudden one. Because foundations usually stay invisible until pressure reveals them. And maybe that's why some collapses in life feel so shocking. The problem didn't begin in the storm. The storm simply exposed what had been neglected underneath. Jesus isn't really talking about construction. He's talking about alignment, about the difference between admiring truth and actually building around it. Because truth that never becomes practice never becomes foundation. And I think that's where the story becomes uncomfortable for a lot of us. Because most people don't openly reject Jesus. They just postpone responding to him. We hear, we agree, we intend to change eventually, but over time, delay becomes a kind of a foundation too. Imagine reaching the end of your life and realizing the issue was never lack of belief. It was lack of alignment. Not that you ignored truth completely, but that you kept postponing building your life around it. And suddenly you realize the storm you thought was destroying you was actually revealing you. Because foundations are not tested in calm weather. They are revealed in storms. So what do we do with all of this? Probably not panic. Probably just become more honest. More honest about what's actually shaping our lives. More honest about the gaps between what we say we value and how we actually live. Maybe the better questions are, what patterns am I building my life on? What do I run to when life gets difficult? Am I practicing the things Jesus taught, or mostly just appreciating them from a distance? Because foundations are rarely built through dramatic moments. Usually, they form quietly, through small decisions repeated over and over. And here's what I love about this teaching of Jesus. It's not meant to scare people. It's meant to prepare them, because He knows storms are coming for all of us. And He wants your life to remain standing when everything else starts shaking. Not because life became easy, but because your foundation became stronger than the storm. And honestly, this is where the entire Sermon on the Mount has been leading. The Beatitudes, salt and light, the hidden life, forgiveness, trust, the narrow road, Lord, Lord. None of it was meant to stay theoretical. Jesus wasn't simply giving information to admire. He was describing a way of life, a foundation. Here's the truth. What you build your life on determines what your life can withstand. This week, don't just reflect on Jesus' teachings. Practice one. Maybe it's forgiveness. Maybe it's honesty. Maybe it's trusting God with anxiety instead of feeding it. Not perfectly, just sincerely. Because strong foundations are rarely built all at once. They're built decision by decision, day after day. May your life be built on something deeper than emotion, something stronger than circumstance. May your obedience become quiet strength beneath your feet. And when the storm comes, may you remain standing. Thank you for joining me on Beyond Belief. This may be the end of our journey through the Sermon on the Mount, but hopefully it's the beginning of living it more deeply. And if this series has meant something to you, share it with someone who needs it. Because truth was never meant to stay inspirational. It was meant to become foundation. Because in the end, the storm didn't create the foundation. It revealed it. And that changes everything.